he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." Strange lands. There are many across the oceans. Northlands of ice and killing cold. Jungle lands of lush growth and warlike people. There are other unfamiliar lands too. The dreamlike land of childhood, which, once left, can never be re-entered. Then there is the strange land of illness, especially mental illness, a land where people and thoughts are distorted, out of shape. A land without strangeness is the land of home, where laughter and familiarity bubble like homemade soup, and where joy and comradeship ice the cake of daily living. The baby's down for a nap, the wash is on the line, cookies are fresh from the oven. Here are 3 of your neighbors having their morning kaffeeklatsch. But where is the neighbor for the empty chair? She is in a mental hospital, captured in a bewildering, lonely world within her. Suspended between the home world from which she has withdrawn and the hospital world which she has not yet accepted, she does not yet know the touch of hands, trained hands, compassionate, understanding, healing hands, which can lead her from the strange world her mind inhabits. Skilled hands of a busy doctor, of the nurse indispensable to recovery, the social worker, maintaining the vital link between home, community, and patient. The psychologist, whose testing often uncovers clues to the patient's illness. The chaplain, with spiritual help for troubled hearts. The occupational therapist, guiding restless hands and worried minds to constructive activities. The volunteer, whose understanding shows the patient he is remembered by those outside. The rehabilitation therapist with job training. For return to home and job is the purpose of the Texas State Hospital system, as Dr. Raleigh E. Chambers, director of the mental hospitals, will tell you.
14,000 Texans today are patients in the 6 mental hospitals operated by the Board for Texas State Hospitals and Special Schools. This does not include the more than 2,000 patients in the 4 homes for the psychotic aged, also operated by the board. 14,000 in buildings with a rated bed capacity of 9,252. Despite the fact that overcrowding still exists, there is less than was the case 5 years ago. For the first time in 10 years, patient loads in the mental hospitals decreased last year, even though the number of admissions was higher than any previous year. This decrease results directly from improved hospital facilities and treatment. Shortages still exist in every category of skilled hospital personnel. On the average, there is 1 doctor to every 250 patients. Your hospital board is endeavoring to overcome these shortages through continuous training programs. For example, the courses for nurse technicians operated in conjunction with Texas junior colleges. Classes are also held regularly for laundry workers, food handlers, and others. Since each Texas hospital is a small city in itself, the cigarette tax has permitted us to renovate old buildings and build new ones. Advanced drug therapy is resulting in quieter wards and a vastly improved hospital atmosphere. Much has been accomplished in your state hospitals in recent years. Much remains to be done, as you will see in the following scenes made in the Texas mental hospitals.
Yes, much has been done. A 1-cent cigarette tax levied in 1950 is making possible some new buildings, like this diagnostic and treatment center, going up to replace the outmoded structure at left. Although new construction does not provide the entire answer to state hospital needs, it is an important factor in making room to relieve present overcrowding. New buildings and renovation of old ones can also furnish room for patient activities which speed recovery. Construction funds have allowed for renovation of buildings like this one. These beds are from the first floor dormitory, which was so drastically in need of repair that renovation had to begin from the walls. Where renovation must wait for months or years, small repairs become large ones. Major repairs turn into gigantic jobs, which are both time-consuming and costly. This dormitory on the second floor has just been remodeled. Now it is clean, light, spacious, where before it was dark and stained with years of use. New wards like these give patients an atmosphere of light, of hope, of comfort, ingredients important to recovery. And they are relieving, to some extent, the serious overcrowding which has long plagued the hospital system. Funds have not stretched to new buildings everywhere they are needed. Here they have renovated a building still grossly overcrowded, with beds jammed against one another, and recreation space relegated to a corner. Still, much remains to be done. This old building has outlived its usefulness and should be demolished and replaced with a modern hospital ward. Boilers like this, furnishing heat for buildings, hot water for dishwashing, laundry, and baths, are precariously old. But they are being replaced as funds allow. The insane asylum name was changed years ago. Concepts of help for the mentally ill are changing constantly. Once, an insane asylum was a human warehouse holding the ill in restraint and adding fright to the already terrifying inner world of mental illness. Today, your Texas mental hospitals aim to return the patient to his home, his loved ones, his community, as quickly as possible, and to bring family, community, laughter, and reality into the hospital scene. Your mental hospital is a city in itself, too often a community of the old, where modern scientific wonders of prolonged years are not always matched with alertness in those years. Care of the psychotic aged adds to the ever-present problems of overcrowding and understaffing, where even a television set must be turned on by an attendant. Your mental hospital is a community of the sick, where maintenance and supply problems are multiplied by a concentration of 16,000 unwell people, dependent on too few doctors, nurses, attendants, recreation leaders, and facilities. $16,000 beds must be changed, some many times a day, for clean beds and clean clothes are vital to patient care and recovery. Mealtime at home is anticipation, intimacy of shared laughter, joy of family conversation. Mealtime in the hospitals is a constant problem of supplying nourishing food on a minimum budget. Here, everything is in giant quantities. 4,000 pounds of carrots for a meal, a boxcar load of potatoes every 2 weeks. And the dinner hour, instead of sounding out with laughter and quiet conversation, may echo shuffling feet, scraping chairs, clattering silver in a room where food is shared and thoughts are not. The mental hospital is a city where busy men and women engage in the deadly serious business of combating mental illness, training people to care for the mentally ill, and of treatment for those sick in mind. Research is desperately needed. In all the nation, out of every dollar spent in medical research, only about 3 cents goes to mental health research of any kind. Yet mental patients fill more than half the hospital beds. Here, the delicate fingers of the electroencephalogram record electrical changes beneath the surface of the brain and probe out hidden disease or injury. There are neither enough dollars nor enough trained people in the research field in Texas or throughout the nation. Technicians in our Texas hospitals, working with all the skill and equipment they have, are far too few. Because trained workers are so terribly necessary, because even money cannot buy the services of all the people needed, our state hospitals must try to fill this gap by intensive in-service training, like the nurse technician class seen here. Such concentrated programs can raise hospital standards and increase discharge rates. Many levels of skills are needed for adequate patient care, from registered nurses, nurse technicians to attendants and other workers. There must be 3 trained people for every 2 jobs in this 7-day-week, 24-hour-day hospital schedule. Comprehensive treatment takes qualified doctors, in critical short supply nationally and almost impossible to procure at Texas salary levels. 3 out of 4 patients could benefit in some measure from psychotherapy. In Texas state hospitals, there are 250 patients for every single doctor. With only a handful of psychiatrists in Texas mental hospitals, hundreds must wait, too many, too long for help. Certain types of patients can benefit from electroshock. However, personnel shortages, serious throughout the hospitals, become critical in intensive treatment areas where close supervision and medical skills are imperative. Insulin therapy, another form of shock treatment, offers great hope if administered early to many of the people who enter Texas mental hospitals. With adequate treatment, 70% of all first admissions can be discharged from the hospital within 6 months and 80% within a year. Mere custodial care has proved a long and constant drain on tax monies, human resources, and productivity. Early intensive treatment, psychotherapy, electroshock, insulin, and drug therapy spell profit in family welfare, earning capacity, and maximum use of hospital space through minimum stay. Glucose brings the patient back from her deep sleep. There has been no pain. There will be no memory of the treatment. And tonight, she may well be dancing in the canteen. Effective as electroshock and insulin treatment are, their use in Texas mental hospitals is rapidly diminishing under the impact of new drug therapy. Tranquilizing drugs, the latest and most promising treatment for mental illness, could benefit 1/3 of the patients, but are available to only 10 or 12%. Because personnel to supervise their use is limited. Although they cannot yet be called a permanent cure, these drugs have shown dramatic results in making patients quieter and more receptive to psychotherapy and rehabilitation. Locked rooms, once used extensively to keep combative and destructive patients away from others, are now being utilized for unlocked bedrooms or for badly needed storage space. To see what tranquilizing drugs can do, we move to West Virginia and the Lakin State Hospital, where Dr. Simon O. Johnson works with the patient.
Darby, how long have you been here? You know the name of this place?
No.
You know why you came here? Do you like it here? Where's your home, Dorothy? Your mother and father living? The patient you last saw is a case of schizophrenia in which we have features of catatonia predominating. By catatonia we mean there is a block in the mental areas in which the patient is mute, is inaccessible as far as reaching is concerned, and they usually show a definite attitude of being out of contact with reality. It's a condition that appears periodically. It's liable to grow progressively worse, and deterioration leads oft-time to long-time hospitalization without the giving of intensive treatment.
Dorothy, do you feel better now since you've been taking this medicine?
I do. I feel better.
Mm-hmm. How do you know that you feel better? In what way do you think you feel better? Are you mingling with the patients a little more and helping with the ward work?
I can talk a little, Terrell.
You think you notice it because you can talk a little clearer. Do you like to talk now more than you did before?
Sometimes I like to talk.
Do you voluntarily go out and engage in conversation with other patients?
No, sir, unless I'm invited out.
Mm-hmm. But once when you're invited, you didn't go, is that it?
No, sir.
Do you feel as afraid now as you did once?
I hope not.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about your brother wanting you to come to Washington after you got better. How do you feel about that?
I don't want to go to Washington.
You would like to go to Washington?
Yes.
We are encouraged by the improvement which we have noted clinically in Dorothy's condition. She's a long hospitalized case, and for a prolonged period assumed no interest whatsoever in her environment as a whole. She was withdrawn, cared little for the association of fellow patients, and took no particular interest in her person. We have noticed of late that she's beginning to talk, enjoys conversation with fellow patients and workers, and just recently it's been observed that for the first time she went alone to the bathroom and took a bath without the services of an attendant. To us, this is most significant because it presents the picture of her appreciation of herself, which are reflected in habit improvements.
Tranquilizing drugs help patients take part in activities such as this self-government council, and a busy Texas superintendent assists them in redirecting their own lives. The cheerful room, which volunteers have decorated, helps build morale. But 5 more like it could be in constant use if space were available. A staff psychologist leads group therapy through a patient council. However, such leadership is limited by a national shortage of psychologists and further curtailed in Texas by present salary levels. Drugs and intensive treatment are not the only keys unlocking doors. Libraries, recreation rooms, craft and industrial shops offer therapy in the simple satisfaction of normal human contact. But there is not enough space, enough trained personnel for these activities in Texas mental hospitals. Music speaks a universal tongue and often is the bridge between strange and familiar worlds. Rhythm reaches patients no other power can touch. Music therapists are essential to every mental hospital, but there is one, only one, for 16,000 patients in Texas State Mental Hospital. With music comes release and the blessed uplift of spiritual strength given by the chaplain. Volunteers help overbusy staff members bridge the gap between hospital and home by bringing simple joys of recreation, the realities of home-like pleasure. Old skills remembered, new ones learned in sewing, painting, typing. These are only a few of the many tools the occupational therapist uses. But there is one occupational therapist where 25 are needed. One cheerful center for occupational therapy where 3 are needed. Even this one must share space for relaxation, also vital to improvement. Self-expression, self-reliance are important ingredients in recovery. Men learn or relearn carpentry or leather tooling. Elbow room is at a premium in space like this, where shoe and furniture repair for the hospital push therapy into a corner. Growing plants, budding flowers symbolize the renewal of spirit, belief in life. Volunteers work in the greenhouses to help bring alive the hope of tomorrow. In cooking, too, there is certainty and accomplishment for people who have been uncertain and afraid. Exercise and posture classes run by volunteers renew forgotten interests in appearance. Dress shops, equipped and run by volunteers, bring back pride where pride was lost in confusion and despair. Volunteer groups working with dedication and love weave the thread from community to hospital to home. Patient recovery takes place only in part in the hospital itself. Full recovery comes only with community and family acceptance. As the community enters the hospital through groups like these, representing civic, service, religious organizations, the hospital patients re-enter the community and the realities of living. This achievement award is a direct result of community-hospital partnership. And where patients cannot come to activities, parties come to patients, even on a back ward. An old lady, confused and forgotten, finds love on a paper plate, friendship in a wooden spoon, devotion in a dish of ice cream and cake. Patients reached by drugs and other therapy, aided by volunteers and staff, find joy in music, bodily release in dancing. Here patients whirl away loneliness, dance away desolation, stamp fear and despair under tapping feet. Anxiety dances with laughter and disappears for a moment. Misery melts into rhythm. Fear rode with her to the mental hospital. Joy will accompany her home. But back of homecoming day was the gentle touch of many hands, the careful blending of many skills. Now, family hands must reassure and steady her, for the biggest hurdle lies ahead. Will she be accepted? friendly hands must supply a cup of coffee. They must also supply the ingredients which every returning mental hospital patient needs. Acceptance, at home, on the job, in the total community. For in such things, recovery may lie. Recovery measured by the width of a smile. What of those left behind? There are not enough hands to reach them all. Treatment still is limited, hospitals crowded. Texans, working with their legislators, can meet these urgent needs. Texans can reach the hand of friendship to patients in the hospital and those returning home. They can help turn these shuffling feet toward hope once more and away from their lonely march through a strange land.